thank you very much. Much appreciated. My name, as the Master of Ceremony has said, is Dr. Martin Koyabe. I do work for the GFCE, which is the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, and also consulting together with the AU. We've been working with some of you here, and today's topic is going to focus specifically on capacity building. And we do have an eminent panel. They've already read their names here, and I'll not waste any time other than just to make sure that we go into the details. We do have a number of issues when it comes to capacity building. We do agree that governments, private sector, development partners, and also international organizations do come together from time to time to build capacity. And we are not talking about capacity, we're also talking about the capability to build cyber. So that is the essence of this particular session. And we really want to dive deeper into the issues, to look at the specifics of cyber capacity building, the capabilities when it comes to areas such as the regulation, policy, and areas such as legislation. We are aware in Africa we do have the Malabo Convention, which has just been ratified, and I'm sure it will be going through the processes of changes if there is, and that's something which is very much welcome. We also know that many countries have embarked on things like national cybersecurity strategies, development. Some of them have already done the second reviews. We know countries have already embarked on things to do with awareness. We heard from the initial panel of the ministers how awareness is very much important in cybersecurity. CERTs and other things such as CSERTs are being enhanced and developed in African countries, which is very much welcome, and also the issue about capacity building. So without further ado, we do have a panel here, and I'll start with, of course, ladies first. I'll start with you, Honorable Ambassador. How does the EU see the issue of cyberspace, and what are the sort of policies that you think the EU should be able to be looking at going forward, given that you're based in Rwanda? Please.
Yeah, thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation in the Cyber Technology Forum. As the Vice President of Seychelles said this morning, this is a wow event, and we're very pleased to be here in this space working also on collaboration and building capacities. So the European Union very soon linked the digital space with the development space, and we indeed have an aspiration to push it forward. We recently adopted what we call the European Union Global Gateway Strategy, which is all about establishing strategic partnerships, building on trusted connections. So it's about supporting those trusted connections with our partners, so supporting developing infrastructures, but beyond that, it's about creating the space for a human-centric, needs-based approach to digitalizations. And I think this is very much connected to the conversation that we're having this afternoon. So for us, digitalization does bring immense opportunities. Today we've seen it, but there are also amazing threats there. And I think the illegal aggression against Ukraine shows how the cyberspace and the physical domain are connected, and how we all need to work also together in addressing those threats that undermine our political, economic, and societal spaces. So for us, this is a space that is evolving, and it only shows how when we work on digitalization and development, it needs to go hand in hand with the space of cybersecurity and cyber resiliencies. The cyberspace is global, it has no borders, and our resilience is determined by the resilience of our partners. And I think that's where we want to build collaborations, to build a global resilience that is as strong as the weakest chain in that resilience. So for us, we work on what we call the 2020 cyber security strategy that is precisely looking at building resilience, technological sovereignty, leadership, but also building those capacities to prevent, to deter, and to respond to that cybersecurity. while we work, and that's the main idea and our main objective in advancing a global open cyberspace. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. I know there's quite a bit about this, and we'll come back to that. And just that you've mentioned about resiliency, building capacity, and making sure that countries, I know, Giacomo, with the World Bank, we always hear you have the money. So how can the panelists, or rather the participants here, from different governments, from departments and agencies, from countries that are participating here, how can they be able to access the capacity building capabilities that you have within the World Bank?
Yeah, thank you so much. So first of all, there are a lot of opportunities around, not only the World Bank. And I think the most critical aspect for a country to really benefit of all the capacity building activities that are around is to have a solid and clear governance for cybersecurity. And when I talk about governance, I refer to three main aspects. The first one is to establish a clear mandate for cybersecurity. So having various institutions that know where is their area of influence for cyber, what they can do, what they cannot do. And this is really important because we often engage with the clients, so for us, countries are clients, that want to put together a policy, for example, and when we start working, we realize that another department in the same government is already implementing this policy or is already working in this direction. And this, of course, is a duplication of effort and a waste of resources. So the first one is definitely a clear governance with a clear mandate. The second one, I would say, is to involve the private sector, because, of course, security is clearly a prerogative of the government, but most of the critical assets are privately owned. So it's really important to engage the private sector in the definition of any program. And this is because, again, from our experience at the bank, but I guess it's the same for all the institutions that promote cybersecurity, we engage with clients that have a very nice program put together, but the private sector is not aware of it. So when it's time of implementation, you don't have the endorsement, you realize that maybe it is detrimental for some critical operators in the country, and this, of course, creates a lot of obstacles. And yes, so also involving the private sector. And the third one, I would say, is prioritizing the initiatives, because not the countries are all different. Every country has specific needs, so also specific priorities. And clearly, coming to the bank or other organizations with a plan of activities that are already prioritized makes everything much easier. Now, we realize all the difficulties that there are in prioritizing cybersecurity activities, and the bank offers support for that. We have a broad range of assessment tools, a broad range of tools to really understand where are the needs, where are the main gaps to fill. So yeah, this is for the governance. Then I would like to add also participating in global fora for cybersecurity. For example, in November, there will be the Global Conference on Cybersecurity Capacity Building in Ghana, and I highly recommend to participate. Thank you so much.
In fact, actually, you're right. There is a global conference on cyber capacity building, which is going to take place in Ghana, and I know Albert was here earlier with his team, so I think you're right. I think that's another way of building capacity going forward. Given that we're talking about countries, I'm aware, Alfonso, you're here from Angola, you're working in this particular institution. Could you just share with us the experiences as an institution in Angola looking at cyber capacity? What are the challenges in Angola that you're seeing in cyber capacity? But you can expand it further. I know you know more than me. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. First, let me thank you for the invitation and to be a part of this panel. The experience of Angola, I think it's very good to share with other countries, because we are a type of country that already invest in technology during 20 years ago. So we invest a lot of money on that. But we cannot say that we are a type of country that can be a reference in digital service, for example. So why? Different investments, different priorities, and different bodies trying to be in charge of the same thing, right? Today, our main challenge, I think we already achieve the main goal is put everyone in the same table and discuss in national perspective which should be done in cyber in country. We are not discussing regarding to the private sector. We are not discussing regarding to the government. We are not discussing regarding the intelligence service. We are discussing regarding to the country, how we can manage it. So technology is going first. We have different needs, different mandates, but in the end of the day, we are focused on the same citizen and same companies. These goals makes a lot of change in the way how we define our governance model. And we are working with the World Bank also, trying to push some and others that are trying to manage it by itself alone. If we're trying to understand what are our challenges for the future, for sure, the main ones is to create a capacity in our citizens and in our employees. Because at the end of the day, we are giving technologies to the same citizen and same employers. Maybe next years, next 3-4 years, we will be a kind of reference in Africa because we are trying to adopt a type of governance model using sectoral SOCs, but based on the same standards, based on the same procedures. So in my first intervention, I said here, but yeah, our first challenge and goal was sit everyone at the same table and discuss in national perspective.
And I think the other word for that is multi-stakeholder partnership within the country. And I think that's the kind of like the thing that we say every time, whereby you work with different stakeholders in order to achieve what you want. And you're mentioning two things, the issue around investing in the citizens and also making sure that you can build capacity through the citizen. And we'll come back to that. Knowing that multi-stakeholders involves other parties, such as civil society. I know, Abdou, you and in Senegal, you are an NGO. You are very passionate about this sort of like area where you are trying to make sure that there is equity within the NGO sector in terms of financing and so forth. Could you just give us an aspect of, as a civil society in Senegal, with this multi-stakeholder partnership in capacity building, what are the key challenges you face in Senegal? Just share with us a little bit. And if there are, how have you overcome those challenges here?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. First, I would like to express my gratitude to the entire CyberTech organization for the invitation and allowing me to share the stage with such brilliant individuals that are immensely contributing to our digital economy. One of the biggest challenges that we face is also universal across the board, whether you are talking about the public or the private sector. And this relates to the human capital. You know, the best defense is often not relying on technology. I mean, otherwise, half of this room would have been out of the job today because of AI, right? But it's rather reliant on its people that are operating and managing those technologies. I mean, this is so to say that human capital is a fundamental pillar in cyber capacity building. But I would like to share a story with you guys today. Once in my hometown in Senegal, in Dakar, I used to go to this coffee shop quite often to take some calls and do some work from time to time, just because my 3-year-old boy thinks he's the project manager of the house and he needs to be on every Zoom call that I'm on. So I met this young man who works at this coffee shop. His name is Musa. Musa has a degree in philosophy, but for the lack of better opportunity, he's working as a barista in this coffee shop, right? Now, I ended up being a good friend with Musa, and one day he approached me and said, you know, Abdou, I've been seeing what you do and observing it, and I think I want to get into this industry. Can you please help me break through? I want to become an expert. So obviously, yeah, I designed a training plan for Musa, a path from a 4 to 6 month path that would allow him to at least get the necessary skills to at least get an entry-level position. Now, Musa reaches back to me 3 months later, and to my surprise, he accomplished everything, and even some additional modules that I didn't even give to him, right? And Musa tells me, you know what, I even started applying, and I've spoken to 2 HR persons that are asking me for a certification, for at least a certification. I said, what certification are they asking you for? He said, at least a Security Plus or a CEH certification. I said, okay, why don't you start with a Security Plus certification, and then we'll see about the CEH. He said, well, the problem is, it costs $300 to pass the certification. I was able to save about $200, but unfortunately last week my sister fell down the stairs and I had to give $100 to my mom to help her with a hospital bill. Now, why is this such an inspiring moment for me, right? Because here I am sitting and reflecting on the fact that there is $300 sitting in front of this young man's dream. There is a lot of Musas. There are a lot of Musas here in Africa. In fact, there are millions of Musas who cannot be where we are today because there is $300 or less sitting in front of their dreams. Thankfully so, we made sure that Musa got his certification, and today he's working as a threat detection analyst in one of our local banks. But where I'm going with this is to say that, you know, in Africa, we have our own realities. We cannot model our cybersecurity development 100% from what we see in the West or Europe. See, I spent most of my career in the States, and I can tell you that $300 is less likely to stand in front of a young man's dream, you know, as opposed to a place like Kibera or Pekin or Gejawai in Dakar, right? So, as an organization, as Cyber Without Borders, we are committed to redefining our own definition of success, what success means for our continent in terms of our realities, and ensure that we give equal opportunities so that no one is excluded. Thank you.
Wow, did you follow that story for Musa?
Yeah.
You're paying attention? That's very good.
We should be clapping.
If I should clap for him, I think that is a very, very compelling story. And I think there are several messages in that. I don't want to be one of these preachers trying to go in there, but I think the point is that there is an issue about what a stumbling block is and how you go around the determination to go across that. And I think Musa's story, whoever he is, he must be an exemplary person, but why can't you just make a book out of it? I think that would be something which is very good. Coming to you, Gary, I know we have talked about the story from Senegal really resonates well with your area, especially when we're dealing with expertise, skills, and how we can harness that. The ministerial panel earlier on, there was a very good example that was given by the minister from Gambia when he mentioned about how he used his local skills, or rather the potential expertise within the country to resolve the issue in 78 hours or something close to that, to resolve that. So the question to you now is, how do we enhance the issue of skills development? And given that you're based in Rwanda, what is it that we need to put in order to bring the experts of tomorrow rather than just briefcase security, cybersecurity engineers? What is it that we need to do?
Good afternoon. When it comes to capability building, I guess it kind of starts at home. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I have learned things today. To me, the block was where J-Lo lived, and I've learned it's about blockchain. My teachers told me my intelligence was artificial for years, and yet today we've learned lots. And that's what we need to try and do. We need to instill that constant lifelong learning into what we work with the youth, and to make sure that that has value. We've also been told today that humans, that people, are either the weakest link with the opportunity or with the challenge. But I look at it slightly differently, and Simon Sinek talks about finding your why. For me and for what we do from a YNV Tech talent point, people are the why. It's the why we do it. We heard from BK and MTN talking about the why they do it is for their customers. For this panel up here, and I think for a lot of people in the room, the why is it creates opportunity for people. That's the individual, their careers. The Musa, who was a great barista. I'm sorry you lost your coffee, though, in fairness. If you made a great coffee, you shot yourself in the foot there, haven't you, really?
That's what I thought.
You need to find another Musa to put this. So it's for that person, for their career, to be able to be economically sustainable. They can be the breadwinner in their house, and that obviously drives the economy from a country perspective. So putting in that lifelong learning, and I guess this panel here is a really good sense of that. Bringing together the ability to fund, the ability to have government driving the right way to do that, and then countries who have both citizens and also private entities who need the skill is really, really key. They say it takes a village, and it's this village up here that's going to make the difference, is going to be able to drive that skilling. The talent is there. We started in Rwanda about 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago, with 50 people providing enterprise support across software and cyber stuff. We now have 450 people, presumably ex-Musas and those kind of things, who now do everything from enterprise support from software right the way through to Azure and Dynamics support. And that's just here in Rwanda. So how do we create cyber center of excellence here in Rwanda? How do we take the guys, take them through the programs? And that's what we do. It's about career planning. So you can start as a SOC analyst. You may not know all the programs and queries to run, but I can seed that. I can grow you right the way through until you become a senior cyber person. You're driving strategy, and you're working with either government or enterprise to be able to make sure you're protecting from those threats and you're defending effectively.
Thank you, because I know the next question will be how we sustain that, and I'll come back to you, so just prepare yourself for that. I just want to go back to Your Excellency, the Ambassador Belén. You've heard about issues about capacity building, people wanting to work with the EU and other organizations. Could you just break it to us? How do you work with you? How do we work with the EU in order to build capacity?
Yeah, thank you very much. So indeed, the framework for all what we do with Africa is based on a joint vision for 2030, together with the continent, which was established in the summit in 2022. And there, digital was at the core of those conclusions and that vision for the future. So there was an understanding and an agreement to work together on security, including cybersecurity, but there was also an understanding to work on digitalization, building infrastructure, as I said before, but also building the capacity in a human-centric way of looking at things, the why, the people, that it was just mentioned now. So that's the framework of the work we're doing. We've learned that we need to do more. We need to step further in what we're doing. And we have a holistic approach where we're working on the regulatory framework. So sharing was mentioned in the panel, in the previous panel. So there's a lot of work that is being done with countries, including here in Rwanda, where we work with authorities in sharing experiences, sharing regulatory frameworks, and see what works and doesn't work, and how we can best engage among practitioners. There's also support to the emergency responses teams that they're going to be in the front line to the implementation of that regulatory framework. And for us, that's essential. And there is also this cyber diplomacy, and that's empowering partners to be at the forefront of international negotiations. We're very happy to see Rwanda sitting with Sweden in the negotiations at the UN on the Global Digital Compact. And that's a key step forward and a key way of looking at the multilateral scheme in addressing these issues. We've realized, and you mentioned it before, that in order to do this, we need to work with a multi-stakeholders approach. So working first within the EU with all the key partners, EU member states, the EU institutions, but also with our partners, working with private sector, working with civil society organizations, and also mainstreaming digital in all the other activities we do. And there is a commitment also of the European Union to step up our engagement and to step up our support to increase up to 10% of everything we do, designated either to digital or with a digital component.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because many countries, once they work with you, then they will go to Giacomo here to say, okay, we want some funding in order to run some of these particular elements. Just coming back to you, Giacomo, in terms of the World Bank, how do you make sure that the projects that have been assigned, the end results reflects what has been invested? What are the challenges when it comes to monitoring and evaluation and sort of things like that? Could you just expand to that so that we can evaluate Angola, for example, to see whether they've been doing a good job?
Yeah, of course. So we often say that if you cannot measure something, you cannot improve it, right? So it's clear that if we want to enhance the cybersecurity posture of a country, we need to assess it and evaluate it. However, measuring cybersecurity is probably one of the most difficult things because what to measure, right? When we engage with the countries and we try to define indicators, normally the first indicator that is suggested is the number of cyber attacks, where if there are no cyber attacks, it means that the cybersecurity posture is solid and cybersecurity is working. Well, unfortunately, this is not a good indicator. This is actually a bad indicator because the number of cyber attacks, so first of all, you don't know what is a cyber attack because you can compare basic DDoS attack together with a very sophisticated attack on a complex OT system. Clearly, they cannot have the same weight, right? Secondly, attacks often depends on external factors. For example, during election time, the threat is higher, so every country can monitor a higher amount of attacks. And third, especially for countries that have a lower level of maturity, so the fact that you cannot detect attack doesn't mean that there are no attacks, so your cybersecurity is good, or that it is so bad that you cannot even monitor them. So these are the challenges. I think when talking about monitoring and evaluation, it's important to understand that this is not something that happens after the implementation, but it happens really before the implementation. So when you define the activities, you also have to define indicators. And in particular, there are two types of indicators that need to be defined. One to monitor the implementation, and one to evaluate the outcome. So just to give you an example, if one of the activities that the country wants to implement is training the personnel of the public administration, an indicator to monitor the implementation is, for example, how many people you are training, right? But even if you reach 100%, it doesn't mean that you are creating impact because maybe the training was bad, maybe the personnel was not paying attention. So you need another indicator, which could be, for example, a test at the end of the training to see if the people that were attending have actually learned something. So this is just an example, but this is definitely something that needs to be done for every single activities. So yeah, there are two aspects to be monitored, the implementation and the outcome. The implementation is easier, the outcome, more creativity is needed, and so far we do not have an answer to everything, but we are working in this direction.
I think you're right, because sometimes the outcome might not necessarily be what was expected, but at least you're achieving something. And I really want to have I know, Alfonso, I'm coming back to you, because you have heard how the World Bank does the assessment, how they try and do the monitoring and evaluation. From your experience in Angola, for example, what can you share with institutional heads here at your level, Director General and Chief Executives, in terms of how you sustain some of the results that you have in capacity building? So we are now talking about sustainment. So yes. How do you sustain that in Angola, please?
Yes, so we are talking about after implementation.
How do you sustain it? Yeah.
Right. First thing is we are starting creating capacity to prevent attacks, right? So every time when we are talking about cyber, maybe we are waiting to be attacked to explain how we are defending our systems. But in the government perspective, right, we don't want to have attacks because we have managed citizen and companies' data, so the government data. So it's the first thing that we want to share with. When you are designing your national framework, please focus on the way to prevent. So the way to prevent cannot be done by only one agency or body. It should be done in the sector. The second one is which is the best approach in the national perspective, right, to defense when we are already being attacked. So, and this we want to share the experience to work on network, task force that can approach in national perspective, right, to share the information, to share the technicals, and also to apply it in all. So we are talking about the communication sectors, we are talking about the private companies, we are talking about the public service. This is the main two things that we want to make it sustainable, to make our investment sustainable. First, working on prevent, and when we have attack, right, working on national architecture to approach how to mitigate not the risk, but now the attack.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and thank you for that, because I think one of the things that we are looking at, I'm sure, the World Bank and other partners here, and even the other panelists here, is the issue around sustaining specific projects, sustaining specific aspects that have been there. We are left with very few minutes, but I want to go to Senegal again. I know you are dealing with your area of civil society. Could you just give us, just briefly, some of the emerging opportunities that you see within this particular space of cyber relating to where you are? Because we are talking about opportunities. Wherever there's chaos, there's opportunity. So can you just elaborate a few of those very quickly?
Yeah, I promise I won't be long this time.
No most of this time.
Yeah. So I think the most pressing issue today is to make training affordable, right, and accessible, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Today we have about 3.5 million open cybersecurity positions worldwide. And on the other hand, we have about 1 billion people living in slums. And only in sub-Saharan Africa alone, there are 238 million people living in slums. So I see this as an opportunity, right, that the West or the North doesn't have. So we have a pool of 238 million people we can pull from if we make the effort, right? Okay. And another interesting fact is that the median age in Africa is 19 years old. Contrary to the rest of the world, in Africa, we are still making babies, right? So our bigger advantage is our youth. And this is so to say that, cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Today, I invite all the managers and leaders in this room to make a commitment to at least offer internship opportunities every year to 2 to 5 people in their organization. I invite our government authorities to make cybersecurity a top priority. I invite the public and private sector to come together and build products and capabilities that fits our economic structure, including affordable training and perhaps a certification body so that the other Musas don't have to go and pay $300 to get certified. To conclude, right, I just want to say this, at the end of the day, whether you are in the main cabin or flying first class, when it comes to cybersecurity, we're all on the same boat. And if the boat sinks, we're all going down. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very good. Let's give him a hand of a clap.
Thank you.
But that's not the summary yet, yeah? But the point he's raising is very important. The point is we've got a demography that is young in Africa, and that has to be an opportunity. We have to turn cybersecurity into a business. That's actually how I've advertised cybersecurity. We shouldn't turn it into a problem. It should be a business. We should be making applications. We should be making software. We should be making solutions. It should be a business. And I think the message here is very clear that look at the future, look at the opportunities, and let's drive ourselves towards it. But give people an opportunity in your institutions. It creates loyalty. That's why some of the military in the world, some of the militaries, I don't want to mention them, they're very capable because they build loyalty. They have people work with them when they're young, they pay for them for 9 years, and then they work and they do very extraordinary stuff. Finally, Gary, can you tell us what we need to do? What are the checks and balances that we need to put in place as a government in order to allow a startup or to allow anything to start within the ecosystem? What are the checks and balances, please?
1 minute. 1 minute. What he said. The key one is demand. for all of what we've got. We can train as many people as we've got, we can create the skills, but unless we bring demand in, unless government works with other governments, works with private sector across the globe, and it doesn't just mean in Rwanda or in Senegal or in Angola, across the world. It's a global organization, it's the one boat, so it has to be demand. We have to be convincing global companies that Africa is the place to find those 3.4 million people. And it is, it genuinely is. The skill is here, the talent is here, the funding is here to create the talent if there are gaps, and that work can be done out of Africa. It is genuinely global. So the world has the great resignation, we've got the great application. Tell us the skill, we'll create it, and we'll fill the job.
That is fine. Given that this is an African session here, in Rwanda, you have one word, final word. Everybody has one word to say. What is the final word in sustainment? What should we do? One word.
Prioritization.
Sorry?
Prioritization.
Privatization. One word. Sustain. Capacity building.
Building cyber trust.
Those are 2 words. Okay, 2 words. That's fine. One word.
Come together. Let's come together.
One word.
Village.
One word.
Cooperation.
And that comes to the end of this particular session, and we are very thankful for that.
Thank you.